All right, so my name is Jeff from Big Hairy Dog, and this is a Big Hairy Dog webinar on V9 tech support. So we'll be going over ways to check to make sure your database is running and bring Retail Pro back up if it stops functioning normally. And I am totally good with you guys chiming in and or posting a comment or chat in the little chat there. So there is a little chat on the right-hand side of your screen in that little panel, I guess you'd have to call it. The GoToWebinar panel, there's a little chat area. Sorry, I just got interruptions in the tech room here sometimes, and I had to tell them to leave me alone. I'm on a webinar. So I'll try to keep an eye on that chat area. If you have questions as we go, please don't be shy. If you don't get it, then somebody else doesn't either, and we need better clarification, right? All right, so I grabbed the outline and I just kind of popped it into a little document that's floating there, and you guys should be able to see that. So the assumption here is that the Retail Pro is down and that we cannot connect to it. And so these are some basic things that absolutely should be checked every time. And I can tell you from doing tech support just recently that every one of these things seriously works. One of the biggest ones is absolutely drive space. I bumped into that twice today already. Now this what you're looking at here, this is a little virtual PC, right? That's just my desktop in the background. And this laptop is not a PC, it's a Mac. So I'm running a virtual PC, and on this virtual PC, you see I have 100 gigabytes on my hard drive. And for my little sandbox virtual PC, I have 12.6 gigabytes available, which is enough for my little sandbox. In real life, that would not be enough for a regular user. I would want more than 12.6 gigabytes out there. Now, things we can do. If we go into our primary drive, mostly it's in our drive, probably for most of you guys. But if we go to the Oracle folder, in the Oracle folder, we would find the Aura data folder. Now that's where the database lives, so you gotta be careful in here. But in the database, we would find our database, RPro ODS. Now, if there are other folders out here, like RPro ODS old, and it's got a really old date on it that hasn't been modified for quite a while, it very well may be that there's an old dead copy of the database out there. You can delete that, especially if it's years old. If we go inside the database, all I would be wanting to look at in here would be the archive folder. I wouldn't mess with any files, but the archive folder should be being maintained. All right, so you see my archive folder is 2.45 gigabytes. And let's go into the archive folder and see what's in there. I've got files starting on September 30th, all the way through October and November, actually farther back in September, right? So what is the archive files? What's their purpose? Their purpose is to rebuild transactional data. So if I had to restore a backup from 3 days ago, I could take the archive files from the last 3 days and use them in the Technician's Toolkit to rebuild my old database back up to current. That's what the archive files are for. Very cool, by the way. However, I don't need an archive file from September 18th. I'm not going to be installing a copy of a backup that's 2-3 months old. Never going to happen, right? We're going to take the freshest one we can find always, every time. So if you ever are low on hard drive space, you come in here and you find an excessive number of archive files, get rid of the older ones. Now, the wise person here would leave, say, the last 30 days, right? So if we're on December 2nd, I would keep probably out through like November 3rd in a real life scenario. Now, for me in this sandbox, yeah, I don't care. This isn't real. I can delete all these I can take all of that 2.4 gigabytes. So every night in our backup, we should be backing the archive files up and then deleting them. That's part of the normal task, the batch file that runs to create our backup. So really, you should only have archive files in there from like a day or two. That should be it. Every night they should be deleted, backed up and deleted, backed up and deleted. So if you find that you have 3 months out there, yeah, delete the older ones, keep 30 days, and then follow up the next day or something with a tech call to find out what's going on with the backup, right? So that'll immediately pick up some hard drive space for you. Obviously, if you're low on hard drive space, then look around for other things. Today I found a bunch of, we should go in here. Let's go into install. What do we got in there? Nothing. We got nothing in there. Let's go over here. Let's go to, usually there's an install folder. I have an install R folder here, and it's pretty clean actually. But what I find is that people will sometimes Retail Pro 9 series 9.4. All right, this is not bad. This does what I want to do right here. I'll find this. I'll find the base image for an install, and then I'll find several different maintenance packs out sitting there. Now, if I was on 277 and then I bumped to 287, then I bumped to 302, I don't need these two folders anymore. I'm never going backwards. So if you look in your install folder and you see a whole row of these maintenance packs, zipped and or unzipped or both, each one of these things is pretty pricey. So there's 971 megs, or basically a gigabyte, decompressed. There are only 750 megabytes compressed, but still, in real life, if I was on 302, I would not need this or this, right? Or this or this. So there's like 3.5, 4 gigabytes almost that I could take. So look around for big, large files to clean them up. I think that's the point here, right? All right, reboot. I got to tell you, it sounds stupid, but yes, get everybody out, reboot the computer, shut it down normally, do not drop it hard, bring it back up. Because if you haven't done that and you call tech support, that's probably the first thing they're going to do. And I don't need to reboot for you guys to know how to do that. Start and stop the Oracle services. Excellent point. So sometimes you can, and maybe you should do this first, actually. So how do I reboot Oracle without rebooting the computer, basically, is what we're asking here, right? So if I go down here to the Start button, and this sandbox is on Windows 7. Windows 10 is no different, though. If you click on the little window in Windows 10, and then the search box presents differently, but it's there. Don't even worry about it. You just click down there just like I did and start typing, and I'm just going to type in services. It comes up to a menu, and we find the services. And I'm going to make this bigger so we can all see what the heck I'm doing here. Okay, so in here in services, I'm going to go down to the Oracle section. We're going to find a few Oracle things installed, a bunch actually. Now, there's only a few here that really, really matter a lot. Right, so this one here and this one here. So specifically, RPro ODS, that is the database. Okay, the listener, the TNS listener, that's the connector. That's what's waiting for incoming requests to process them and give them over to the database, right? So these two, as far as Oracle goes, these two are the only two that matter. There's a third one, though, that matters that's down here towards the bottom on the screen, Retail Pro License Server. So those are the three pieces that have to be restarted. So to start them, at least I've seen Retail Pro technicians do it all kinds of wacky ways, but what they told me back in the day, in the beginning when we started this road down V9, is that you always turn them off in the order of least importance to most importance, and then turn them back on oppositely. So the least important one is the license server. So we're going to right click that and we're going to stop it. Now a license server should stop just about like that. It should not hang. It should not take 30 seconds to stop. If it takes 30 seconds to stop, you've got a problem with the license server. Reboot the computer. So we're going to go up to the TNS listener now, the connector, and we're going to stop that. That should also be very quick. Now, my little sandbox has a bunch of Prism junk on it, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes and kill all that stuff because we're not talking about that. So all these Prism items that you see shutting down, this won't happen if you're on Retail Pro. If you're on Prism, though, it will happen. And I'm going to suggest that if you have Prism going on, you might be smarter to reboot. I mean, it's not that hard to start all the Prism services. It's only about 5 or 6 of them. But you know, the services manager here, it can be a little confusing, and if you screw it up, it could be bad. So, you know, shut it down, count to 10, fire it back up. That's pretty safe. That's bird in the hand here, right? So, right here, we go right click and we stop the RPro ODS. This one will take 30 seconds to stop. This one will not be fast. It'll tease you. It'll zip over there to the middle and stop and make you feel like it's going to shut down quickly, but it is definitely not as fast as it could be. Yeah, I guess I could. You mean my outline here? Could I send you a copy of this? Yeah, I could. Good question, by the way. The best thing to get is let me see if I can even do this here. And yes, we can send you copies of anything we have, anything we get. There is, though, a customer portal for Retail Pro that, and if you guys don't have it, I know, Matt, you probably have this, but I would recommend you get a login to this website here. Mine works, but it doesn't work because mine's a dealer login, and I have access to the dealer site. So it lets me through, but it doesn't look right. Anyway, so out here, though, there's a knowledge base, there's documentation, and there's some very nice troubleshooting docs out there. But yeah, can I send this through to oh yeah, let's try this here. All right, I'm going to try this. It's just because you're asking, and I think it's a good move. All right, hang on a sec here. No, you didn't throw me off track. You're fine. Got to say, just wasn't maybe as didn't think about sending that ahead of time. So I'm just putting a copy locally here into the documents section, so I can click on that and try this right now. All right, so let's see if this works here. All right. Oh, nice. So it's apparently not in the right format. It's in RTF format, and apparently that is not one of the supported formats. All right, let's try this again here. All right, so in your little GoToMeeting control panel on the sidebar, I just dropped in that PDF, which is just a copy of that folder or that file. So you should have that now. You should be able to grab it if you want it. Good question, by the way. And it's good for me to, occasionally you got to hurt my brain a little bit. Maybe try something I haven't done before, right? All right, so let's go back and fire this stuff back up. So our Pro ODS is the most important, so I'm going to fire that one up first. It obviously shut down successfully. Now, what's most important here is that when you get all three of these fired up, do not rush into, so I'm going to do the listener next, start, right-click, start. Do not rush into Retail Pro. License server, right-click, start, because it takes about 1.5 minutes before Oracle will start accepting connections. So if I run into Retail Pro and fire it up, and maybe I should just actually try that. I don't know. Maybe I've talked too much already, but let's see if we can get the error. Okay, yeah, it's already in. All right, connect. Yeah, unable to see the workstation. The server is waiting on live. So right, see, so it tried to connect and it was not available yet for connections. And if you start and you just sign in normally, you may get that was not able to connect to the database. There's a connection error that pops up that's pretty common. Initialization failed. Retail Pro is unable to communicate with the database. Please ensure the database has been started or contact your tech support for additional assistance. Right. So it's pretty angry at me right now for that. So that's always going to happen though. If you try to go in too quickly, you're always going to get that. That's a guarantee. That's not going to be. So then if you call tech support and I connect, and it'll have been 5 minutes by the time I connect, it'll work for me because let's see if it's been long enough. Right, we already looked at archive files, the location and their purpose, connecting to clients, connecting a client to a server. Oh yeah, we could go look at that. That's pretty easy. So yeah, now it's happy as a clam, see? Now it's popping up, hey, log in. I just had to give it that 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds-ish. I always just wait 2 minutes usually, because you know what? Bird in the hand, right? All right, so how do you connect a client to a server? So if I have like a machine that was at a remote store, I close that store, I want to move it over to another store, and I want it to stop using the local database, and I want it to start using the database that the rest of the workstations at that store use. How would I connect it? It's pretty easy. In your Oracle folder, this is slightly tricky, not great deal, but slightly tricky. In your Oracle folder, the path is the only thing. You got to write the path down. Now, once you have the path, you're good. But there's these two folders here. These are ODS folders. Now, this one, as you can see, this is actually, I never upgraded this one. This is a 9.3 VM, but the current one is 12C. This is 11G, whichever. But you'll have a regular one and a client one. Now, in both those, in the exact same place inside both folders, you'll have network, admin, and then you'll have some files. Listener.aura and TNS names. Now, in the other folder, the client will only have the TNS names. It won't have the listener. But this listener and this TNS names, and I have multiple versions because, yes, this is a VM that I hack up all the time. So if I open this listener.aura, it may ask you what application to open it with. Notepad is the right answer. This is a simple text file. So the host name is right here. So that should either be the name of your computer, like if this is a WS2 and I'm connecting it to WS1, and the computer name on the network was WS-1, then I would type WS. I would just type in WS-1. Or if I have static IP addresses and that particular one is a 192.168.1.100, I would type in the IP address. Now, if this is running a local database, then I would stop. I would go in and stop all the database services, and I would set them to disabled. When I right-clicked and stopped and started those a minute ago, I could have gone into properties and disabled them, which we could go back and do. So if you're going to be connecting to a database, you don't need to start a local database, right? So in here, if we go down to Oracle's, any one of these will be fine. Here's the listener, right? I could go into properties, and in properties, the automatic manual disabled. So I could just go in and set these local services to disabled, stop them and set them to disabled so they don't start anymore, basically. And then connect this one, going in and editing this field right here to be the correct host. Don't save. And I would do that to the listener, the TNS names, and then I would do the same thing in the client folder for the same exact path. So again, it'd be Oracle, it'd be the ODS, either regular or client, then network. We can find network here. Then admin, and in here we would find the TNS names.aura. And open that up and do that one as well. Mine's more complicated. I have hacked this one up for various reasons. But really, yours would only have one place where it would say host. And that is how you would redirect it. And then you'd have to, relaunch Retail Pro possibly. All right, hardware basics, checking power cables. Yes, please check the power cables. I've had people yell at me, and as they were yelling at me, realized that their keyboard was unplugged. So, when I find when I don't dot my I's and cross my T's, when I don't check the basics, then it always ends up being one of the basics. And dumping the printer, very good idea. Just as computers can have memory problems, so too can printers. Now, earlier we had a cache drawer that wasn't opening, it was tied to the printer, we dumped the printer, fixed the problem, right? So it doesn't always work. I'm not going to tell you it's always going to work, but I'm always going to say it's one of the I's we dot, right? We dump the printer. Now, how do we dump a printer? I have to excuse my wacky art. Okay, your basic receipt printer, most of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time, a little cubish looking thing, right? And what we're looking for is there's usually a little toggle switch down here. It could be in the back, could be in the front, right? Okay, so we got a little toggle, dude. And then up on top, we have like a little feed key, and the paper is like coming out of here, right? Okay, that's exciting. All right, what you do is you turn this off. While this is off, you hold down the feed key and turn it back on. And you hold feed key down for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 seconds and let go. What it'll do is it'll kick out some paper, and it'll tell you what BIOS it's on and some other stuff. Then you hit the feed key again when it stops printing, and it kicks out a little test print pattern, and then it's done. It should be completed so that it's dumped the memory now, and the printer is now fresh, ready to accept things. Then try either reprinting something or try opening a cache drawer if you've got a cache drawer. In the cache drawer situation I'm talking about, when you have your cache drawer basically piggybacked, so that this cable comes out of here, goes into there, right, and then a cable comes out of here and goes into the computer. That's a very common pass-through cache drawer configuration. There's also direct cache drawer, like serial cache drawers, that do not go through the printer. But just FYI, if you're having a printing problem and or a cache drawer problem and you have pass-through cache drawers, you want to dump your printer probably really before you call us, right? Get that out of the way, get that done. Workstation preferences, yeah, workstation preferences, always a good area for lots of tech support issues. Some basics in workstation preferences. You got a lock right here in version 9. Version 8 has the same thing. First page in version 8 and 9, you have a lock. This just locks the workstation, right? But that's how you turn it on and off. Really, well, peripherals, there's a ton of things you can go through in peripherals, but I can't go through all those. Everybody has different hardware out there. There's some basics. You know, if a cache drawer, you have a cache drawer is either, as we said, Windows pass-through, or it has an OPOS driver. And you have to make sure it's set correctly. And if it's set in there like that, you have to make sure you have the right opening command in there. And I would, you know, if your cache drawers and everything are working now, I would go in and take screenshots of this stuff. Just get it documented, right? Everybody knows how to do like in Windows 7 or 10, if you just go to the bottom and you type snip, right? Everybody knows that there's a snipping tool built into Windows, right? And you can just go snip, and you can say, you know, I want to snip this here. Then you can save this anywhere you want, right? Or you could copy it and open a Word doc and paste it in there. Really handy. So I would recommend that you document like the cache drawer and anything else you have set up, you know. So shopper display, line printer, if you have them set up, what the settings are. It wouldn't be a bad idea to have, if you're using Cayenne and you have Genius, then you have in the user interface plugins, you have your Cayenne Genius plugin, and you have like your Genius IP and your terminal ID and your merchant ID and all that stuff typed in here, right? Would not be a bad idea to have that screenshotted. Let's hop down to printers, though. This is where you really get your bang for your buck in here. Some basic things I've seen in printer setup. So right here, you see that this printer right here, this fake printer is my default printer. It's active. It's got a dock design in there. Everybody's happy. If I click on other printers, you see I cannot see the settings for the printer that's down there. A real common problem I see over and over again is that they end up, some people end up with, they check off the wrong thing in the wrong place. They end up with more than one active printer. If you've got 2 printers that are active, it's going to initiate 2 print jobs. And that's going to be awkward. So the only way to check it is when you're done setting up each section, just scroll up and down here and make sure you only got 1 left, right? If you got 2, then you need to disable it. Now, obviously, you got to set up every document. So that's a new receipt. That's reprinting an old receipt, right? This is an SO deposit. This is a credit card. Now, with credit cards, we don't print drafts anymore, right? So what's important there is not that you have an active or don't have an active printer. I don't think that matters. What's important here is that it be disabled. So turn that function off. We never printed drafts for debit cards. Turn that function off. gift receipts are pretty cool. I say that's a really slick feature. If you have gift receipts and they're set up, I would recommend using them. But whereas a lot of these other ones, we don't do check receipts. We don't do most of these. Now, in the most recent versions of V9, FYI, if you maintenance back up to it, there's a held receipt node now. They added that. So if you do want to print held receipts and you want to have a unique design so you know it's held, that it's not a real receipt, you can do that now. So that's pretty much it for workstation preferences. There's other things I could go over, but we're not really talking about centrals today, and so I'm going to just back out of here. Again, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to jump in anytime. Got no issues with that at all. All right, Technician's Toolkit. Oh yeah, hours of endless enjoyment in there. All right, so let's go to Tools, Technician's Toolkit, and sign into the Technician's Toolkit. Yeah, I don't really care, thank you. Okay. Yeah, this was a big deal back in version 6 in 1996. It still exists in version 9. Diagnosis report provides a comprehensive view of the system state. We used to use these in version 6, but we didn't have remote access in version 6. Now we do. If you want to know what's going on in the computer, dial into it. I'm just going to say, diagnosis is cool if you don't have remote access. But in my opinion, everybody out there in retail should have a piece of software like TeamViewer, like LogMeIn. There's a plethora of them out there. Those are the big two, but there's tons of them out there that you install on all the PCs, and you probably only have one license. Like if you have a TeamViewer license and you're using your license to dial into one or more workstations, nobody else could use it at the same time, right? Nobody else could be dialing into PCs because you only have one license. But the user, depending on what kind of license you get, could be dialed into more than one PC at a time. So for instance, if I have 5 stores and I'm doing an upgrade, I could dial into the first one, start it, dial into the second one, start it, dial into the third one, start it. I'm only using one license. I'm connecting to multiple machines, but I'm just using the one license. So I strongly recommend having remote access to your things. You could go in here and you could run this little diagnosis and you could send that report back to yourself. That's, I'm going to say it's kind of weird. Sessions is not on our list there, but I got to stop and point out sessions because hopefully you never need it. But if you go into Technician's Toolkit and you go into sessions here, and somebody out there, Workstation 1, was not following your direction, you could disconnect them from the database. So if you said, hey, I need everybody out of Retail Pro, I need them out, and they need out now, and they just ignore you, you can shut them down the hard way. Kind of evil, but sometimes very, very necessary. All right, indexing and tuning. Indexing and tuning are super basic. Okay, this is, I don't want to waste our time on a webinar, but basically, you set your level, the lower the level, 1, the lowest, means that you're going deeper in, you're indexing deeper into the data, and therefore searches are faster. So we usually run everybody at 1. We're not worried about the space it's taking on the hard drives. Hard drive space is pretty cheap today. So all you do is you click on indexing, you click start, it indexes. Same with tuning. You go down to tuning, you click start. Now, if you have to index or tune, you need to then follow up later with a tech support call. If I go down here to the start button in Windows 10 or Windows 7 and just type task and find task scheduler, you should have in your RPro here, you should have scheduled to run indexing and tuning. Now mine are disabled because this is a virtual machine and it's just a sandbox for me to play with, right? But these should be running and they should not say last run never. They should say that they were successfully run. So every night you index and tune. You shouldn't need to do it manually. Now, if you're having slowness issues and you go and index it and tune it and things speed up, then we need to follow up and see what's going on with your scheduled tasks, right? All right, so backup, yeah, backup, hours of business enjoyment on the backup. Everybody should know how to do a manual backup. So in here, we've got the backup and restore node right here. In there, we've got backup. Underneath backup, we have options. Now, if you're going to manually do a backup, you've got to answer some of these lower level questions first. Type of backup, well, complete. Like I'm going to take the whole database, right? Location, pick a location. Now, if you have a DB backup folder, which I do not, but most of us, we set up a DB backup folder that's right there after C, right before DO. Just know that the DB backup folder is a managed folder that is not just sitting there to use for all backups. If you put something in there, it'll be maintained for about 7 days and it will be deleted, which might be your intention, which would be fine. So if you want to keep it, then put it someplace else. You know, put it in your install folder, for instance. The name here, if you need to, you can modify that. Like, you know, like for initially when we first install Retail Pro, we always come out here, other technicians, and they put a blank backup in, so that if there's a problem with the data, we can just restore the blank and then re-import something. We don't have to like uninstall it or reinstall it or anything wacky. Nice to have a blank backup. So, you know, if you're doing something and you're going to do an import, you might say pre-import. Now, the rules here are no spaces, no special characters. So I'm using capital letters to sort of designate where the next word starts. It's the best I've found anyway. Anyway, so you would come out here, you would set your settings, be careful of backing up archives, be careful of compressing data. A blank database is 4 gigabytes. To compress a 4 gigabyte file is not quick. It's going to take a few minutes. So if you're in a hurry, if your machine is partially failing and you need to dump the data, I would not take the time to compress it. Nor would I get the archive files, because if I'm just going to get the database, I don't need the archives. So I would not check those two off at the bottom probably. If I was in a hurry, I would go up to backup, then you just click start and it does a backup. Usually takes, for a blank database or a very small database that's just started, about 3 minutes. It's amazingly fast. And most of that actually is stopping and starting the Oracle services. It has to stop all the services, dump all the data, and then start all the services up. So there's your basic backup. Now, the recovery, is recovery on here? I probably should mention it though. Restore, yeah, it's right next. So the recovery here, or restoring it, this is easier. You don't need the options menu at all. You just have to say what kind of backup it is. So from a complete backup is our most common. You have to say which one you're doing, right? Then you got to say what drive you're going to write it to. And then you click start. It takes about the same amount of time, a little longer to do a restore than it does to do a backup. Very, very simple though. All right, I do not see any questions yet, so I'm going to continue on down the road here. SQL shell, okay. Man, this is a very powerful area. You can do tons of really good stuff in here. So it's also very dangerous. I'm going to have to say right up front, you can get in trouble here. Anyway, down here, you see the SQL shell takes a second to open it up. So with Retail Pro, we buy Retail Pro, we get this Oracle database, but it's not really like our database. It's a proprietary database. Hang on a sec. Sorry about that, guys. I'm in the tech support room, and we get a lot of interruptions in the tech support room. I apologize for that. All right, so this Oracle database we got is proprietary. So we don't have the DBA password. We can't get into Oracle. So this is our avenue to get into Oracle right here. So in the sidebar here, let's scroll up at the top. Let's point out a few things here. Okay, I'm going to collapse all these so we can see what we got. I've got a bunch of Prism tables, okay, as you can see. And I've got some business intelligence BI tables. Those are all extra, okay? I don't have BI installed, and most of you guys don't have Prism installed. So the two we're dealing with is tables and views. Okay, views are off limits. You can't do anything with a view. A view is a composite view of a table, or more than one table, potentially. So views are used in reporting. Views get updated by Oracle. So the data flows out of the tables into the views. You can't do anything with the views yourself. So tables, that's it. Okay, so let's take a look in tables. Now this is pretty like programming geeky, but it's really not that bad. I'm going to scroll down and just pick, I'm not randomly picking, but I am going to pick a file. I'm going to pick invin SBS and see if you guys recognize. Now this is not your data, but it is data, just sandbox data. But I think we all recognize that that's a DCS code, that's a department code, that's a vendor code, that's a description 1, that's a description 2, right? This is the inventory file right here, right? So there are things called select statements. There are things called update statements. So for instance, and we're going to go through this pretty quick, I got to strongly recommend that if you're going to do anything out here, that you get a technician's assistance like myself or one of the other certified techs here to help you out with something like this, because this can get, let's just say this rabbit hole is very deep. We're not going to go down the rabbit hole. We're just going to look at the front door. But all right, so let's just say select asterisk all, wildcard for all, asterisk from the table called invin underscore SBS, where, little where clause here, vend code, vend underscore code equals, single quote, Nike, single quote. Now, this is very cap sensitive. Oracle is very cap sensitive. So if it's all caps, it needs to be all caps. Everybody on the same page? So now, I typed a command in here. I got a little lightning bolt. I clicked the little lightning bolt, and everything on my screen says Nike. Now, we're going to go down one more spot, and we're going to say update the table. Update invin underscore SBS. Set vend code equal JS where vend code equal Nike. Now, return characters. Don't need them. But me as a human being, I like them. They help keep my head straight. So update the table, set the field where a condition is met, right? It makes sense for me to have those in there. Now, if a vendor bought another vendor and you had to switch your vendor code for all your items, going through and editing each row one by one would be painful. It would be much easier to just go like that, right? Now let's pop back up here and say, show me everything that's got the Nike vendor code. Doesn't find anything, does it? That's because everything has JS on it now, right? Now, what I know that you may not be aware of is it's not actually done yet. Right, so some of these here JS ones used to be Nikes and some of these were already JS, right? If I wanted to keep this, I would have to now go down and type in commit and then execute the lightning bolt one more time. If I exit right now, I do not save that edit. So they built in a very nice sort of protection layer there, a little fail-safe safety net, right? So if we go back down to the SQL shell here, and I try that again, if I select asterisk from invin SBS where vend code equals Nike. Well, I didn't make any typos. And I did make a typo right there. Tried for the underscore, but I missed and got the plus sign. So that definitely will not work out well for me. Right, so as of this moment, I did not overwrite those yet because I never committed that back to the database. And again, if you're not 110% really confident with SQL update statements, and they can get a little squirrely when you get into join statements. You have to join one table to another. So let me give you an idea of what I mean here real quick here. Just take the simplest thing here. We're looking at Nike in the inventory file, right? And we have vendor code and description 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice, nice, nice. Beautiful, beautiful. Color, size, cost, spiff, foreign currency cost, currency. Hey, wait a second. Where's price? I don't see price here. I see cost, but I don't see price. Like, is price missing? There's markdown price. There's first price. I don't see price. That's because it's not here. That's because you can have more than one price on a given item, right? So there is an invin SBS price table. And a given item could have more than one price, right? So for this item here on price level 1, that's the price. Price level 2, that's the price. Price level 3, that's the price. And of course, they connect on the item system ID or SID. And we got a wild turkey walking right by the door there. I guess it's feeling pretty thankful here after Thanksgiving. All right, so you see what I'm saying. This item SID here was another one. There's a whole flock of them literally right outside my office door. All right, so if you're not comfortable making join statements and getting in, and that's what I mean by this, we're not going that deep down this rabbit hole. We don't have that kind of time. So then call a technician, explain what you're trying to do. We can get in and help you write a SQL update statement, look at the options, and make sure it's the right thing to do. All right. That's the SQL shell. Be very careful in there. Okay, so let's get down to data maintenance and take a look at a few things down there. So at the bottom of this Technician's Toolkit, there's a couple of nodes that are just really handy. So let's pop down here. I'm talking about the inventory and miscellaneous nodes down here in data maintenance. So what we have down here is like a little tool bag, right? So recalculate company quantities, recalculate committed, rebuild your style links. All these great little things are down here. And in fact, let's pop into miscellaneous here. Here's our delta. Let's talk about the delta here in a minute. But remember I mentioned a minute ago in the SQL shell that the views are off limits, that Oracle updates them. What if I wanted to manually update them ahead of time? Update materialized views right there. You click on that, you click start over here, and it goes out and updates your materialized views. It's done. That fast. All right, so delta. The delta is, hopefully everybody knows what a delta is, but a delta is a set of tables that keeps very complicated statistical information data on the items, on the vendors, on the departments, on the styles, right? So when we go in and ask for a piece of statistical information, either in a report or by going into inventory and actually running the little tool in there, it doesn't calculate those things real time. It gets them from the delta. That means the delta has to be updated like nightly. So that is usually done through the scheduler as a task. On a nightly basis, it's running a little update. Now, in here, if I go into Retail Pro, just go into inventory, boom, there's my inventory. On the bottom of the screen, we will see Delta last updated on, and you can see that mine is showing 11.6. Well, mine's a virtual machine, and it's a sandbox, and it doesn't update every night, okay? So mine is old. Yours should never be old. Yours should be today's date. Now, it updates at 1 in the morning, so it's a safe bet that none of the sales from today are actually in the Delta yet, right? They'll be in there tonight. So you're always 1 day behind. And if it's, you know, really, when you're looking at Delta statistical data, you're looking at like months, quarters, years. You're looking at big chunks of data. So typically half a day is like a drop in the bucket and not worth messing with. You know, maybe last Friday, maybe towards the end of the day, if you'd wanted to look at statistics from Black Friday, you go out there and you could update your materialized, or excuse me, you could build your Delta. You could update it. It's not hard to do. You know, you guys would only have 1 subsidiary. I have 3. But typically everybody has 1. You just set it to update and click all and then click start. And it goes out and does an update on the Delta. Now, what's the advantage to doing it in here versus just going into like here and saying tools, update Delta, right? I mean, why not just do it the easy way, right? That command that you see on the menu has a command line parameter to run silent. So you won't see this here. You won't know when it gets done. So if you go in and use that command, it'll just be invisible. There'll be nothing. You won't know what's going on. You won't know when it finishes, which honestly, I'm surprised it's taking as long as it is. But normally this takes, I don't know, a few minutes. For me, it should take less because I don't have any data. I don't even know why it's taking this long. I don't make sales in this. It's a virtual machine. So for you guys, you know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops, probably. Yeah, for me, like 2. But so if you're going to go to lunch and you need the Delta updated when you get back, just use the one in the menu, right? Like, let it run invisible. I'm not going to be there for an hour anyway. But if I'm like chomping at the bit and I need to know right when that thing's done, you want to come in near and you want to say do it, and then you'll see right there, Delta was updated successfully. And you'll know exactly when it finishes. Now, if you do an update or a build on the Delta, if you don't trust your Delta, you could also go in and say do a full build and start that. It'll go back from the beginning of time and build everything. That'll take longer, but it'll reset all the numbers and give you a nice, clean, pretty Delta. But plan on that being an hour, unless you got a really big database. I've had a few clients that have really, really big databases that took like a day. But most of us probably are in the under an hour range, to be honest. All right, but that's how you update your Delta. Everybody knows what a Delta is, I'm hoping. I'm just going to go, I got no data, but we'll just go look at like this thing here, form view. There are multiple places where you could get to this kind of data, but here is an item, a style statistics. I'm just going to put in again, I have no data, so it's hard to to know what to type in here because I really don't have enough data to probably even worry about. But, and this is an old version of RPro. 9.4 is actually much, much faster than this. But here you see what these things are, even if I don't have any data in here. Turn by quantity, turn by cost, gross margin return on investment, stock to sales ratio, end of period on hand. So June's end of period, July's end of period on hand, by store, August, September, October. So you can see through time. And with that many on hand at that rate of sale, what's the days of supply? Here, how many of you sold, et cetera, right? So this is Delta stuff. Available at the department, the vendor, the style. This is style, by the way, and item level. And also then there's a bunch of statistical reports which we're not going to go through. This is not what the webinar is about. But I didn't want to mention the Delta without giving you like a peek at it, just to make sure we're all on the same page as to what a Delta is. Right, so building the Delta, recalculating sales order balances. Again, that's a tool in there, reanalyzing dates. Be careful with the reanalyzed dates. There's two of them. So make sure, like here's a reanalyzed dates up here, and then there's the reanalyzed item received dates down here. I'm pretty sure this one here is the purchase order area. I pretty much always go in and take a look at the document. Like I just double check it in the document, right? And you guys should all have like copies of the PDFs. If you don't, again, that My Retail Pro website, if you, any and all Retail Pro users, if you click on the, give me a login and ask Retail Pro for a login, they'll give you credentials to get in there. And then you can go to the documentation portal and download any documents you want. Advanced sequences. I got to tell you, I don't even know what advanced sequences are. I don't even see it in here. So I apologize for that. I'm going to have to follow up on that outline. Oh, there it is right there. Include. Oh, nice. So that's pretty much a technician 101 error, right? So I've checked off 3 things. It's going to try and do 3 things. That's really embarrassing. Well, no time like a webinar to do that. Yeah, we want to skip the recalc Z out thing. Recalculate in transit. So in transit and committed are things that are always being updated in your system if you track in transit. Not everybody does. But committed, I would always rebuild my committed quarterly, monthly-ish if you use it. It's very, very sweet field. Copy global UPC to local UPC. I don't know why you'd need that unless you were doing some data migration. Recalculate item received dates we talked about, update materialized views we talked about, recalc fill percent on POs. And that brings us down to polling basics. Yeah, wow, that's the fun just never ends here with tech support. But polling is a big area. All right, so let's talk about ECM, right? We'll let that go for a bit because I have no idea how long it's going to take, but I don't want to be like tied up on that. All right. Great, good, wonderful. So any of you guys that have multiple stores are pretty familiar with ECM. ECM usually has its own directory right next to Retail Pro. And we have station files. So real quick here, let's make sure we're all on the same page here. I'm just going to draw you a little picture because that's what I do. If I have like 3 stores and I have an office, let's say hypothetically, my office would have the server. My stores would be polling into, we usually refer to this as like the wagon wheel. Like, so the main office or the main location is the hub of the wagon wheel, right? Just keeps your head on straight. Not a very round wheel, but this configuration is very convenient because the main can accept multiple concurrent connections as opposed to dialing and connecting. If I had to connect to each of these stores, it would be sequential. So what we do is we have the remotes drop their data off because they can all drop it off at the same time. And the main can accept, well, there's no real limit. The limit for how many connections it can accept has more to do with your bandwidth than it does with the software. At the end of the day, there's a limit to how much data you can push over your internet pipeline. So the main location here in my configuration, in my ECM window, I would have 3 station files, 1 for each of the stores. However, the ECM menu at the remote store would only have 1. So this one here would connect with this one here, right? And this one here maybe would connect with this one here, and this one here would connect with this one down here. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's a station file right there. Now this one here is used for an import-export tool, but it's really no different than the rest. My screen's a little bit different, but important things to have in here. Obviously, you got to name it. You got to say what type of station it is. You need to make sure that the identification 001 is the subsidiary. The story is 001 as well, so it's 001, 001, and it's got a station polling letter of Z. The store station would then just be 001Z. We put the login name, just sysadmin at both ends. What I mean by that is that whatever password you put in this end here, it has to be in this end here too. It's got to be the same both sides, or no connectee. So that's why we just use sysadmin all the way through. Type of polling, internet, IP address. Now, in my configuration, see, this is a main. So I need to put an IP address in there, but the main's never going to use it. So in this situation, that's a static IP address. These out here are dynamic IP addresses. I'm not paying for static IP addresses out in the field. That means that their IP address could change at a whim based on your internet service provider, ISP. So they call you, drop data off, they call you and pick data up. And your IP address never changes because you have a static IP address. So at the main then, I need an IP address, but I don't need a real one. Our polling port number is 20,000. That can be changed, by the way. If you change it, you gotta change it all the way through. All right, let's get back to the checklist. That's just kind of the basics overview here. So polling, basic overview. Yeah, all right, we kind of looked at the basic overview. There is a process for the polling cycle. You know, the main and remote. This in version 8 used to be a day, but more like an hour now. So if we were to look at that cycle as it goes through, the remote here would process out. I'm just going to put a PO here, which creates little packets of data, right? Then the remote would exchange. When they exchange, do a send receive, it would reach out and connect to the mains exchange, creating a little tiny little private network temporarily, so to speak. These mailbags would be shuttled across, would now exist at the main, at which point the main would go into processing them in, and that is half the process. Immediately upon processing in, it would go into process out mode, create more mailbags. The remote would again do a secondary exchange. These bags would be pushed over to the remote, where the remote would process in. Right, so that's the basics of polling. So all that occurs in like less than an hour now in version 9, invisibly, automatically, in the background, all the time. So the stores are completely autonomous. They can run indefinitely without polling, but they're getting little updates all day long. Kind of the best of both worlds. So Right, so that's your basic overview. Stations we looked at, command line processing. Yeah. The whole invisible thing is super cool and yet such a pain in the butt. All right, so if I went out here and said process out, I'm going to click process out. Watch the right menu. All you're going to see is it grays out. But we don't see anything else, do we? It just comes back when it's done. So if I come down here and I say in a run box, okay, my ECM is on my C drive. So I've got C:\/ ECM /ECM proc. Now I've added to that a -out and a -show, and optionally could add a -stid:001,001Z. So if I want to process out for only one location, I have to tell it which location. So those are the command line parameters that you would use to process out manually. Now these, I'm just going to point out, these could be put into, like, so let's say new shortcut. I'm going to paste this in, paste, and say next, and I'm going to say proc out 001Z. So I just created a shortcut for processing out. Now, what's the advantage to processing out at a command line versus clicking the button in the application, right? The advantage is a little window pops up and it tells you when it's done. So if you're troubleshooting and you want to know that it happened and you want to see what files got processed out, then you want to run it that way, because now I can go in and I can see what it did. Now, when you're processing files, let's go take a look here. C ECM polling 001,001Z out. All right, we've got an invoice XML, a PO XML, and a license XML that was just created at 4:08 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So these files were just created by that process out. So outgoing files go to out. Now, initially they would have gone to proc out. They would be in here in this waiting area. When they were all done, when it said finished, it then moved them to the out folder, ready for pickup by the remote. When stuff comes in from the remote, it goes to in received. It all gathers in here. And then when we go to process it, it moves it from the in receive folder to process in. They sit in here in this little, like, waiting room while each one gets funneled and processed in. So if you're having a pulling problem, it's a good idea to run it manually, see the files, like actually see them here, then do the exchange and see if they move over to the in receive folder, right? I mean, follow the actual files as it goes through the process. Okay. Yeah, we all, I mean, processing situations. Most common situation, I saw this earlier today, in fact, is something happens to the exchange. So you got a main, you got a remote. Remote creates some files, they exchange, they reach over. Now the PCs connect. That IP address exists and the PC is allowed to make a connection. This exchange here tries to connect to this exchange here, and for whatever reason failed, and you get a Windows socket error, or a WinSock, sometimes called a WinSock error, where the connection was refused. That means one of two things. Either this exchange is not running or this exchange is confused. Now, it could be confused because Windows has a memory problem and we need to shut it down and start it up again. It could be confused because we got more than one exchange service running and they're fighting for it. In either case, if you get a Windows socket error, go to the main and shut down your exchange service. So in here, we would go to services. There should be in here an exchange service, ECM exchange, waiting on port 20,000. So stop this service, right, and start it up again. Like shut it down and then restart it. Like just toggle it off and on. Or reboot the computer, right? That kills two birds with one stone. You know, there's a plethora of different kinds of errors you can have with any given network, and I can't go deep down this rabbit hole either. But you've got at a main and a remote, you have a network, so you have a PC, and that PC is connected to a router, and that router is connected to a modem, and that modem is connected to the internet, which goes over to the other modem and router and PC, right? So at any point in this, we could have a problem. There's a thing called port forwarding, specifically has to do with internal and external IP addresses. The external IP address is actually being taken by the router, right? So the modem converts it, and the router takes the external IP address. This computer then has an internal IP address. So when we say, you know, show me my IP I'm seeing on the web, right? If I go like this and say, show me my IP, it's showing me my external IP, all right? So if we say, what's my IP? IP, that's my IP. Okay, but if I go down here and I say IP, you know, let's see, yeah, CMD command. So I'm just asking for a, if I can type today, I'm asking for a command prompt, and in the command prompt say IP config. It'll show your IP address. Okay, so the internal IP address on this virtual machine is 10.0.2.15. The external IP address is 216.31.243.162. So a remote store would dial this here. The remote store can't see an internal IP address. So there's a thing called port forwarding. So in the router, you have to go in and configure it so that when something comes in on port 20,000, it's forwarded on to the correct internal IP address, right? And different routers have different configuration screens for that. Sometimes it's called pinholing. So it depends on the router. I can't really go into specifics on that. That's just another really common situation I see out there with troubleshooting and situations. There's some very nice websites. If you search for, like, can you see, like, testing ports, testing IP and ports, there's very nice websites out there. You can test your IP and port. So, all right, so scheduler, yeah, we need to look at the scheduler. The scheduler, now, real quick here on the scheduler, as we looked at a minute ago, the remote store is going to have a process out, right? It's going to have an out, an exchange, another exchange, and an in, right? Those are the tasks at the remote, where the exchange is always open. The connection is always open in version 9. It loads when you load the software. So really all we're going to do is have a process in and a process out in the middle of these two right here, right? So what I'm saying is that scheduled tasks at each end can be different, right? Now, also in ECM, we got 3 of them open. Nice. Under options, workstation preferences, in rules, there are these little switches here. So I could process in immediately after a send receive. So immediately after a connection occurs, I could just knee-jerk and process those things in. Now this is great. For everyday polling, this rocks. For troubleshooting, it's really painful. If you want to see the files make it, can visually confirm they're there, then see them process in, you need to turn that off. But on a daily basis, that means I don't have to schedule the process in, right? As soon as the file shows up at either end, if I got that thing checked off, boom, it goes. We usually do process in this way. We don't always do the process out this way. Usually we schedule a task to process out when we want to. So and I don't even know if I have any of those tasks loaded, reindex, clean, run, SRO. No, I don't. I don't even have any of those tasks loaded. The tasks that would appear in here, let's say import task. And do I have them handy? Let's see here. Right, so let's go to a remote polling. Right, so process out, send, receive 1 and 2. Right, so nice. Right, see, so I just added that to my list. So there would be that one, and there would be 2 more exchange windows, and these things would be right. So daily start at 8 o'clock in the morning, and repeat every hour for a duration of 15 hours. So basically, it runs all day, every hour, pushing data over, pulling data back, and processing it. So you process out, you exchange 1, the main process is in and out. We do exchange 2, both sides are set to process in on receiving the files, right? Boom, done. That's your basic setup for polling. I hope you guys are all still awake out there. I'm not seeing much going on with the whole chats or questions. Hopefully you guys aren't nodding off too much. I can understand if you are, though. Pretty dry stuff. All right, so cancel, don't care, cancel, boom. So mostly the scheduled tasks, we can download them to you. It's easy to do. I could set one up from scratch, but kind of a lot of work, and I'm not sure I'd keep everybody's attention. So let's pop back into our list of exciting topics here. The log, yeah, logs are painful, but you got to know them. Let's not have 3 of these open. All right, so well, that is totally not ECM. That's Crystal, but that's not ECM. My view logs, processing logs, export com log. So in here, we can go in and take a look at a given day, right? And we can say view log. It'll show us the little window again that we would have seen if we processed manually, so we can see everything that was processed. So if you're troubleshooting this, right, this is exactly where you could see exactly how it was run, what files were processed, everything. So if you have to confirm something or anything about polling logs, then you have to come in here, and that's how you get to them. Best done with a technician on the phone if you're not, because getting to them is easy, but understanding them, you know, kind of a pain. All right, so regenerate, initialize, yeah. So regenerating and initializing basically involves sending or resending data. So hypothetically, let's say that this remote here was brand new, that the database here was blank, that we had nothing at all on this side yet. I would need to send everything to the remote store. They got nothing, right? So to do that, I would go in here and I would say regenerate, put it in initialize mode, and I would say that location, send it all. Then I'd click OK and OK, and it would process the data out. and I'd have a very big mail bag getting ready to send down to that store. So initializing like overwrites the files, right? It's not a friendly process. Polling is friendly. Polling is sharing data. I make a sale, I share it with you, you share some inventory changes with me, life is good. Initializing is, this is what your data looks like, I don't care what you thought it looked like. So now, hypothetically, and this is a debate that Ken and I have had for a while, off and on, cancel, cancel, cancel. In version 9, and Ken's got a good point here, I hate when he's right all the time. If I send a receipt, so if I send a receipt to the main processes it in, that affects inventory, and they process out the inventory change, and that gets sent back to the remote, right? At the same time, what's called a CNF or confirmation file gets generated here too. So a confirmation file goes back to the remote. If the confirmation file does not go back to the remote, this receipt would be resent in the next polling. So Ken's point is we don't need to initialize inventory to the remotes anymore. If we do initialize the inventory to the remotes, it does temporarily fix an inventory control problem if the main and remote do not agree, but it doesn't fix the root cause. Why aren't you getting your confirmation files? Why aren't things flowing correctly? So he says if you fix the problem, then all the confirmation files will automatically reflow over there and it'll fix itself, which he's probably right because he's the king of polling. But there you go. Now, regenerate. What is the difference between regenerate and initialize? If I can get back into my little machine here. Regenerate would be used to, like, say, pick a year, pick a station file, store. Now, this is typically done from the remote to the main, but could go either way. So then we would take a time period, like December. So that's the current month, current year. And then we have to pick an area, like document. So we got to say receipts. So if at the main, I ran a report and said, what the hell, you guys had crappy sales yesterday. And the store in turn said, no, we had a great day. I'd say, that's not what my data shows. Then they could regenerate the data for that store and it would resend everything. Now, is that a risk? No, you can't really double sales up because every receipt has a SID, a receipt has a system ID. So it's not going to allow a receipt to post twice, right? So basically what it's going to do is it's going to cherry pick. It's going to allow the stuff that didn't get in, and it's not going to allow the stuff that it's already got in, if that makes sense. So if you're missing sales, then yeah, it's kind of a shotgun approach. You just send the whole month, all the receipts for the whole month down, boom, and let the main just grab what it wants, if that makes sense. So same thing with adjustments or transfers or vouchers. So that's regenerate. Now, if a remote lost all its history and we reinitialize them a new set of data on a new machine, we could regenerate their history, right, back to them for, say, a year or something, right? If we wanted to take time to do that. Okay. Right, so we talked briefly about port forwarding and dynamic IPs, ECM proc stock. Yes, that's what I was describing earlier. If the ECM proc, like if it hangs, you can it'll be a problem, and it will you have to restart and restart it to get it to knock out. Yeah, they already corrected this. This is there's an old configuration where you could add an ECM proc INI, but that's long since fixed. It's not really happening a problem anymore. But that's the format for the file right there. That's what it used to be. But no, that's long ago. Don't even need that anymore. So that's really pretty much all I have for my little outline, my little checklist there of V9 tech support things. Any questions? Anybody have anything else they want to ask? Hopefully it was helpful-ish. Pretty dry stuff. All right, so then if you guys don't have any questions, I am going to say thank you very much for attending today. You guys have a good rest of your holiday season here. And we will be here. If you need us, give us a holler, and we will talk on the next webinar. All right, thank you very much. This is Jeff at the Big Hairy Dog signing off. We got a question. Good timing. I don't know if it was super helpful, but thank you. That was very, very, very polite. Very nice. Thank you. All right, you guys have a good one.